Um, it's Sunday, and um, one of the things that's on my mind this morning is how a Sunday church experience is really symbolic of stepping into a sacred space and letting go of the things of the world. Now, we do this, let's say, maybe once a week for an hour, all well and good. But the practice is daily. Eventually, when the practice becomes matured, it's moment by moment that you're willing and choosing the sacred space to be every moment, right? So every day is like Sunday, to use a Morrissey song. Um, this is the idea that we want to enter into a state of awareness that is very different than the state of the world. And then we actually go back into the world, as they say in the 10 ox herding pictures of Zen. We come to that 10th stage of awakened awareness, that when we enter back into the world, we have boon bestowing hands. We bless. We generate transformation in other minds, right? That's the end game of all of these sacred teachings, that we undergo the inner transformation, we are born again into light, and then we extend or share that light with everyone, because everyone is the self. And so the church experience is really that. It's an experience. It's about going inward and beginning to make a distinction between the things of the world, the perishable, the impermanent, the corruptible, and the incorruptible, the imperishable, and the permanent. Right? So this is the distinction between ignorance and knowledge, light, darkness and light. Right? And so we want to play on these ideas today, all within the context of seek not outside yourself. Right? This is a major shift in consciousness when you begin to understand this principle. Seek not outside yourself. And we're gonna look at that teaching through the lens of actually Carl Jung's commentary on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Gospel of Matthew, the Lin Ji Lu, which is the recorded sayings of Zen Master Lin Chi, Sri Ramana Maharshi, and A Course in Miracles, all within 55 minutes, my friends. So here we go. So let's start by just calming the mind, finding the breath, and letting go of what we think of the world and what we think of ourselves and what we think we think. And so a core element to the practice is turning your attention onto your own awareness. And seeing, if you can, to trace back to where the I thought lives in that awareness. This sense of I am the body, I am my name, that I thought. As you turn your attention onto your awareness, see if you can trace back to the domain of where the I thought lives and abides in awareness. And as you look for the I thought, eventually, through much practice, it comes to be realized that it can't be found. And yet, when left to this state of not paying attention to it, the I thought or the ego, to use Rumi's words, is the mother of all idols. And so as we look for the I thought with this one-pointed awareness, making our I single, we will shine away the false sense of self and separation and undo all of these idols that have us seeking outside of ourself. So we practice this morning with this intention. So just to prime the pump, W.Y. Evans Wentz wrote this, or actually was the first to publish a translation of part of the Tibetan Book of the Dead back in the 1920s. He was a student of Oxford and got with a Tibetan translator and produced what many of us probably know as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This was like a groundbreaking work, and it was really at the heart of a lot of the 1960s hippie movement, revolution in consciousness, right? And Carl Jung wrote the psychological commentary to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and we just want to touch in a little bit on what Jung was saying here, because it gives us a very clear outline between these two distinctive ways of perception, okay? He says that for those who are undergoing this deeper work, this contemplative understanding, he refers to them as Gnostics. And he says, a great reversal of standpoint, calling for much sacrifice, is needed before we can see that the world as given by the very nature of the soul. Now, to help with this obtuse language, he's basically saying that it takes a great willingness to turn your attention back onto the nature of your own consciousness and realize that it's your consciousness that's generating the world. And this plays a major part in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. As we'll see, when we die, according to these deeper contemplative sciences, we encounter what's in our unconscious. And so to undergo the initiation of realizing that I am generating everything that I experience within my own consciousness, I undergo an ego death while still seemingly alive in the body. So I die before I die, as the Sufis would say, so that when I do physically depart, I remember this initiation. I have the awareness now that when I go into the after-death state, and what the Tibetans call the Bardo plane, the plane of the in-between, where all of these subtle worlds unfold, I will realize all that's being generated is in my own consciousness, right? If you've experimented with shamanic plant medicine, you may have had these experiences as well. It's the same idea. It's this practicing of death and the realization that you're generating your environment from your own consciousness. And therefore, you cannot fix, change, or run away from what's appearing out there because it's all originating from within you. The initiate comes to realize that. Jung says, it takes great willingness. He uses the word sacrifice, or translate it from the German as sacrifice, but I would say it takes great willingness to make that shift within yourself. Because what he then says, it is so much more straightforward, more dramatic, impressive, and therefore more convincing to see that all the things happen to me than to observe how I make them happen, right? This is the easy way out. I am the effect, not the cause of the environment that I'm experiencing. Indeed, he says, the animal nature of man makes him resist seeing himself as the maker of his circumstances. That is why attempts of this kind were always the object of secret initiations, culminating as a rule in a figurative death, which symbolized the total character of this reversal. So you die to the animal identity and you're reborn as your divine nature, Buddha nature, Christ mind. You go from darkness to light. That is the initiation. Jung says this has been going on for millennia in Egypt, in the Eleusinian mysteries, in the Kabbalistic mysteries. This same principle of dying to your lower self and realizing that your higher self, which is right here, right now, is actually generating your environment. So to seek outside of yourself is to be unaware of the fact that everything is within you. You're generating it all. We are just ignorant to the nature of our own consciousness. That's why these contemplative sciences are for the few, not the many, because it says that we are very much more inclined to identify as the animal body and think ourselves the victim of the world we see. And I can't change that. This is out of my control. And there's no way that what's going on out there has any connection to what's going on in here, right? It's a split mind, right? And so Jung is saying that's why these initiations took place in secret for so long. Such was the case, at least, with all the mystery cults in ancient civilizations from the time of the Egyptians and Eleusinian mysteries. They were all to prepare the living for the beyond. Right? This is what Socrates says this in Plato's dialogues, that these higher teachings are to prepare you. All philosophy, this kind of philosophy, is to prepare you for death. That's the whole purpose, to prepare you for the after-death state, so you don't get lost in the menagerie, the conjuring of your consciousness. And then finally he says, so this is the outlook, that in the initiation of the living, however, this beyond is not a world beyond death, but a reversal of the mind's intentions and outlook. That's the shift. You don't go anywhere. It's a shift in your intentions and your outlook. This is what we keep coming back to in our talks every Sunday. It's like looking at that picture, and are you focusing on the young woman or the old lady that are simultaneously arising in that one image? It's your outlook. It's your intention. What do you want to see? That's the shift. That's the rebirth, right? How subtle, and yet how profound. It affects everything. He says it's a psychological beyond, a psychological beyond. And he says in Christian terms, you can call it a redemption from the trammels of the world and of sin. Redemption as a separation and deliverance from an earlier condition of darkness and unconsciousness, and leads to a condition of illumination and release to victory and transcendence over everything given. And as we're going to see in the teachings of Zen Master Linji, that you're no longer the slave or the dupe or the effect of circumstances. Circumstances don't dictate to you what you are. This is the teaching. But what's required, keep in mind, because a lot of the times I'm saying this and it might not be resonating with you. It might not be going, you might not have that green light or that yes in your heart. And the reason is, it takes great effort and willingness. You just can't come here on a Sunday morning, sit for 50 minutes, listen passively, stay the same, get up and go on and be yourself. It takes great effort to turn your attention around and change your focus and allow this transformation to take place into your consciousness. So this is why sometimes you're hearing it, but you're not listening or not understanding. And it's because of this deeper shift that takes place when your willingness lights up. That's the secret. That's the missing link to making this happen. So, in Matthew's gospel, we're getting this outline again where Jesus is saying, don't focus on the things that are going to bloom, fade, and die, the things that change, the outer world. He says, what value are they? Right? That's what he says. But he says, rather cultivate treasures in heaven. Really, he's really saying in this antiquated language, cultivate your consciousness. Develop these hidden potentials within your psyche, because that's what's going to actually be your treasure. That's where your wealth and abundance is, knowing the nature of yourself. Yes? So then he says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If then your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is diseased, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? He said, your eye, E-Y-E. In this translation, if your eye is healthy, and the King James is, if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. If your eye is diseased, or if your eye is distorted, you will see darkness rather than light. And then he says, if then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? He's saying basically what you perceive within yourself is going to be your universe. So if you're not experiencing the light within as your true nature, your whole universe will reflect that. That's how great the darkness is. It's either you're experiencing the light that lighteth all things that come into the world, you'll see the glory of God manifesting, or you're going to see a world in decay and corruption. And it's all on what Jung was calling this psychological shift. This is what A Course in Miracles talks about endlessly, that it's always a perception correction. That's where the correction lies. And if I'm seeking outside of myself, I must have first decided that my eye is not single. I am now looking at myself in darkness, in lack, in need, and I'm going to go out into the world to try to find it and get it and take it. And this is the disease of the mind, he says. That's the word that is translated there. If your eye is diseased, you're going to seek outside of yourself. Am I reaching anybody this morning? Because these teachings are medicine. These teachings are radical. And if they weren't liberation teachings, they wouldn't disagree with everything you already know. That's their nature. Their nature is to confront you, and their nature is to show you very starkly and clearly the self you think you are isn't you, and it's blocking you from your joy and from your peace, from your abundance. So this is why when we listen from that separate self, we can't help but not want to listen. Tune out. Because it's literally saying that self that you think you are, the image, the body identity, doesn't exist. And that's your medicine. Because to believe that you, as infinite awareness, and that's who you are, and remain for eternity, you are this right now. If you are infinite awareness, fully identified as this little speck of body identity, not only are you diseased, but you become so intoxicated with pain that this identity proves to your mind to accept your freedom would be the ultimate sacrifice that you don't want to take. It's just too high of a cost to pay for peace. And so keep in mind, as we talked about last week, I can't help but bring it back here, this fungus that occurs in nature that hijacks the nervous system of the ant and makes the ant crave certain foods and walk to a certain place in the forest and climb up and latch its mandibles onto a high stalk so that the fungus can grow out of the ant's head and release its spores so other ants can be infected by it. This is the mind of the separate self. It's a parasitic fungus within your psyche, because it's making you think and feel and act and do things and crave things and have these impulses that drive you out into the world. And more pain results, right? Isn't that the case? Like, just do a basic assessment. Look at wherever you've gone for satiation, for pleasure, for enjoyment. It comes and it goes. At best, it just leaves a little bit of a lull. But when we're really driven and we want more and more and crave it, it's torturous and it never ends. Desiring never ends. It's like pouring gas on fire. You can't get rid of the desire, and it craves more, and it needs more. And oftentimes, these desires, when not met with satiation, they get twisted and perverted, and they make us even more in pain and suffering. That's the nature of the individual state of separate self. It is a parasitic intelligence that, based on our willingness, drives us into madness, drives us into endless seeking and never finding and craving for more. And look at what it's doing. I mean, you see it in your own life, maybe, or in the past you saw it. But we have this on a collective level, and institutions are driven by this same psychology. Look at what it does to the environment, to the air, to the water, to whole populations. Look at what it does. You can see it, you can map it. And it's not out there. It's a psychological disease, as we've been diagnosing it. It's a seeking outside of yourself. And what must take place first is a denial of your wholeness within. A denial of your wholeness within. And this gets us into the conversation of narcissism. Okay? So psychologically, narcissism is a diagnosis within the DSM-5, right? It's a disease within the mind. It's a disorder. And when you look into a narcissistic personality disorder, the etiology or cause of the disorder oftentimes is the child didn't get their basic needs met, their love needs, right? These object relations that the child needed when it was just a budding ego at an infant stage. The mother was to indulge that ego, love that ego. That ego was supposed to feel like it was the best thing in the world, right? That child. And then that child would know that it had substance, it had value. There was something within me that is lovable, that's worth something, that people really do admire and respect. And so that would be the healthy development where there's something within me that I can count on, that's beautiful, that's lovable, and therefore I can be beautiful and loving to others. When the narcissist is developing at that early infancy stage, the parents don't meet those needs, especially the mother. And when that need isn't met, the child then feels like it has to go outside to coax and ploy, manipulate, and control others so that they can beam back love to the child. So the child feels worthless and then has to do something outside of himself to get his love needs. And I submit to you this morning that as long as we're identified as the separate self, as the ego body identity, we are all to one degree or another on the spectrum of a narcissistic personality disorder. Because really, and Lisa was saying that there is she was telling me about this song that really touched her heart, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was, I'm going to wait here until speaking of God or the Spirit, I'm going to wait here until I feel your love, and I won't move until I feel your love. Is that more or less what it was? I'm going to stay here a little longer, learning to be loved by you. Right? That's meditation. And what we want to recognize is the personality disorder of being the separate self. It's like we have a knee-jerk reaction not to stay, not to allow that to happen. We get out of it because there's something within us that feels like it can't be loved, shouldn't be loved. So we actually have to sit and wait here a little longer so that I can be loved by the Spirit. We have to let it permeate all of the barriers, the shields, the defense systems that we've put up. Notice it. Notice it when you're in interpersonal dynamics with other people. Like we are very good at shielding and keeping things superficial so that it doesn't get dangerously close and we don't feel the insecurities of this gaping lack of love within the center of our heart. That is a diagnosis of a personality that is narcissistic. And what is a narcissist? Someone that's in love with their own image and trying to get this image to win, to succeed, to achieve. So this is what we all start with in one degree or another. And we come to these spiritual teachings ready to undo that idol within the mind, ready to allow God's love to so soak and penetrate and permeate this heart space of ours that the idols melt and the lack is filled. But we have to wait here a little longer. We can't move. We can't distract. We can't run away. We can't avoid. And it might hurt at first because we have all of this story about how unlovable we are. And we have proof, right? Because what happens is the outer world mirrors the inner world. And if we start from this idea that I'm not worthy of love, and it could be highly unconscious, you might not think this in your conscious mind. But if I start out as that separate self all alone in my own head, unworthy of love, my relationships are going to show me that. I'll be abandoned. I'll be cheated on. I won't be able to stay committed. I'll be the cheater. Whatever it is, there's going to be the dynamic of love is impossible. I'm not worthy of it. Or it hurts. It's pain. So we have to work through all of those stories and defenses and layers so that love can dawn in our heart. That's meditation. It's sitting here doing nothing and allowing the peeling away, the removal of the blocks that we've set up to this infinite presence that is limitless love. then the mind will undergo a psychological shift. It must, because its whole view will change from lack to wholeness, from self-hate to pure love. That's the healing. That's the medicine. That's these teachings. And they are confronting our lacks. Right? The trouble is, and as Jesus was telling us, the disease is that we think hate is love. And we protect ourselves. We protect the littleness. We have to learn to get out of that. We have to learn to recognize and spot that. Actually, before I go on from there, there's a little part of the epistle to James that was very helpful in this too. James says that, my brothers and sisters, consider it nothing but joy when you fall into all sorts of trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect effect, so that you will be perfect and complete, not deficient in anything. But if anyone is deficient in wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and without withholding, and it will be given to him. But he must ask in faith without doubting. Listen to this. So if you lack any spiritual value or quality, anything lacking in your psyche, you go to the source and you ask. And God's nature is to bestow. He says, but remember, you must ask in faith, knowing that it's yours, knowing you will receive it. It's already given. Without doubting this, because, he says, if you doubt, you're like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed around by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the source, since he is a double-minded individual, unstable in all of his ways. That's why we don't receive. We're unstable. We're double-minded. I want what the animal body has to offer, and then it hurts so bad, I want the spiritual teaching, so I'll go to church or read a book or go to class. But then I'll fall back into the mud and go back into the animal body. And we do this for a while. Jesus says that's the neurotic stage. We're trying to compromise. We're trying to fulfill our needs as the animal body, and we're trying to be in the spiritual abundance of our higher self. And the two will never meet. So when we ask and don't receive, it's not because God is withholding. It's because our mind hasn't accepted that single path. Let your eye be single, and your whole body will be filled with light. You'll get the downpour and the download of your abundant nature. It will radiate through you. It's already given. But if we're double-minded and we doubt in our heart, he says that's when the eye is not single. It's double-minded or diseased. And therefore we look like we're lacking. We're going without. We're struggling. We're suffering. So the whole point of this is nothing is happening outside of your consciousness. The way that you focus, the way that you identify, is what's generating your experience in life. This is the core teaching. And now we get into Master Lin Chi from the Chinese Zen tradition, or Chan. So he says, students today can't get anywhere. What ails you? Lack of faith in yourself is what ails you. If you lack faith in yourself, you'll keep on tumbling along, following in bewilderment all kinds of circumstances and being taken by them time after time without ever attaining freedom. That seems like it was taken right out of the James's epistle. You're going to be like a wave on the ocean, tossed about by every circumstance, unstable in all of your ways. It's one of the core problems of the narcissist. The narcissist doesn't have grounding in himself because he's never felt loved at his core. And therefore, circumstances is how the narcissist values. If the person reflects back to the narcissist his beauty, his skills, his acumen, then the narcissist feels good about himself. But if the mirror of the outer person shows disdain, upset, abandonment, the narcissist feels horrible about himself. He's driven by circumstances, unstable, lacks the grounding and the faith that within him is the true value and the true self. Right? Isn't this also what drives us into spiritual teachings and practices? I lack, so let me go out there and find something that's going to give me a better me. But really what the teachings are doing is it's turning your face around, having you look at yourself with a different perception and realize it was what you were was just covered over with a false self. It's a removal rather than a giving. Lin Ji continues, bring to rest the thoughts of the ceaselessly seeking mind, and you will not differ from the Buddhas. Do you want to know the Buddha? He is none other than you who stand before me listening to this discourse. But because you students lack faith in yourselves, you run around seeking something outside. Even if through your seeking you did find something, that something would be nothing more than a fantasy written in words. Never would you gain the mind of the Buddha. Make no mistake. If you don't find it here and now, you'll go on searching through endless lifetimes. If you wish to differ in no way from the Buddha, just don't seek outside yourself. So one of the practices that I would really like to drill down on this morning with you is just quiet your mind and get present to this seeking, this impulse to seek. Now, that impulse to seek is there whether you associate it with something spiritual or not. It's the drive to get. Become present to it. Notice how unconscious it usually is, how under the radar. And yet it operates all the time. This drive to get, to seek. It implies incompleteness. It implies not having, not being enough. Don't tell a story to yourself about it. Just be aware of it. And notice how it really does take center stage with everything that the outer self is identified with. It's how the outer self lives. It's a seeker. It needs and it wants to get. That's its makeup. You don't judge that either, but recognize it. If you want to wake up to the true nature of reality, we have to go through this impulse to what is beyond it within. It's going to be a barrier to entry if you stay as the separate self driven by the drive to get or seek. The mind must get quiet and realize that it's not going to follow the impulse. If you wish to differ in no way from the Buddha, don't seek outside yourself. The pure light in a single thought of yours. Now he's going to go through these technical terms. He's going to talk about the highest heaven, which is beyond name and form, Dharmakaya. He's going to talk about the expanse of the celestial realms that are full of bliss and light architecture, Sambhogakaya. And he's going to talk about where sacred beings, the Buddhas, incarnate into these forms to be teachers of the worlds and the liberators of mankind, the Nirmanakaya. Listen to how he puts this. The pure light in a single thought of yours. This is the Dharmakaya, Buddha within your own house. The non-discriminating light in a single thought of yours. This is the Sambhogakaya Buddha within your own house. The non-differentiating light in a single thought of yours. This is the Nirmanakaya Buddha within your own house. This threefold body is you, listening to my discourse right now before my very eyes. It is precisely because you don't run around seeking outside that you have such meritorious activities. He's saying who you really are fills all the worlds. That's your true nature. The highest heavens, the celestial realms, and the lower realms of form. They're all within the house of your awareness or your consciousness. You were given everything eternally. This is why the teachings require us to shift our perception, because it's a completely other world or story that we're telling ourselves right now. Really, check in. If you're not jiving with this message and you're finding yourself wandering away in thought, check in. That's the refusal to accept your natural inheritance. It's really good to just be aware of how you operate. No judgment. But recognize what drives you, what you're refusing to accept about yourself. All of the realms exist within your own house. You know, there was there's a book that was written on low magic. It's called Low Magic, and he says in the subtitle, "It's all in your head. You just don't know how big your head is." It's all in your head. There's no one outside of you. The one listening right now is the limitless self. Now, recognize the brainwashing and the conditioning and the impulses to refuse and reject that are constant. It's that fungus. Y'all got a fungus. A little bit more from Lin G. So he's then asked this question by one of the disciples. He says that the question is, what is Buddha Mara? Now, Mara in Buddhism is the devil. So what is the Buddha devil? The master said, one thought of doubt in your mind is Mara. But if you realize that the 10,000 things, that means all of existence, never come into being, that mind is like a phantom, that not one speck of dust nor a single thing exists, no separate things, it's all projection of consciousness, that there is no place that is not clean and pure when you realize this, that's the Buddha. Thus, Buddha and Mara are simply two states, one pure, the other impure. Two focal settings in your consciousness, two ways of perceiving, if you're a student of A Course in Miracles. Holy Spirit, Buddha, Mara, ego. Two focal settings of perception. One shows you a pure realm, another one shows you an impure realm. And it's thought by thought by thought by thought. Instant by instant by instant. That's why there are no neutral thoughts. If you kind of just go back to sleep now, you're taking a Mara thought. And Mara doesn't want to listen to the Buddha. Mara wants to listen to Mara. That's the fungus. Then he says, in my view, there is no Buddha, no sentient beings, no past, no present. Anything attained was already attained. No time is needed. So Lin Chi is an exemplar of one who's reached the flowering of what the Course will call the atonement. Right? The atonement means the separation never happened and the ego doesn't exist. So that's the completion stage. There is nothing to practice, nothing to realize, nothing to gain, nothing to lose. Throughout all time, there is no other dharma than this, no other teaching. If one claims there's a teaching surpassing this, I say it's like a dream, like a phantasm. This is all I have to teach. In other words, he keeps pointing us back to the nature of our own awareness. You're never not going to be the limitless one that is everything and that the worlds are manifesting inside of. This is the nature. Get used to it. When we don't want it and we refuse it, we suffer. What he's teaching is there's nothing to get. There's something you need to discover by great effort and willingness to get off of the addiction of being the animal body. That takes practice. That takes great willingness. But once you make that choice, like the story of the prodigal son who's in the pig pen and is starving, says, what am I doing? My father has everything. I just need to turn around and go home. As soon as he makes his journey back, the father rushes out to meet him. So that's the point. When you begin to turn your face around, instead of looking for your treasure in the world, seek the treasure of the kingdom within, the Father meets you. All the great masters will meet you. The Holy Spirit will meet you on the inner planes and maybe on the outer planes and pull you in. You'll be shown every step you need to take. But it's not an outward drive to get. That's suffering. So we'll end with this. This is the Course's teaching, page 864, if you have your book, you want to read along. The section is Seek Not Outside Yourself. Seek not outside yourself, for it will fail, and you will weep each time an idol falls. Heaven cannot be found where it is not, and there can be no peace excepting there. Each idol that you worship when God calls will never answer in his place, can't give you the peace, can't give you the love that you're wanting from that idol. Seek not outside yourself, for all your pain comes simply from a futile search for what you want, insisting where it must be found. Get present to that too, right? We got present to the impulse to get, the drive to get, this seeking outside. Also get present to how we've already established what we think we need. What will make us happy? We've clearly probably formulated that. So he's saying that we insist where it must be found, and then he asks us to ask ourselves, what if it's not there? Do you prefer that you be right or happy? Be you glad that you are told where happiness abides, and seek no longer elsewhere. You will fail, but it is given you to know the truth and not to seek for it outside yourself. And then he's speaking to all of us still caught within the narcissism. No one who comes into this world but must still have hope, some lingering illusion or some dream that there is something outside of himself that will bring happiness and peace to him. Right? Also get present to that. We still have some lingering hope, a dream, a fantasy, that we will find something outside of ourselves that will make us happy. If everything is in him, this cannot be so. So either I've bullshitted you for the past hour, or what I did say from these higher teachings is true. And if it is true, you will always find despair and suffering when you're driven to find your completion and your happiness outside yourself. It can't be both. If everything is in him, this cannot be so, and therefore by his coming into this world, he denies the truth about himself and seeks for something more than everything, as if a part of it were separated off and found where all the rest of it is not. This is the purpose he bestows upon the body, that it seek for what he lacks and give him what would make himself complete. And then paragraph 4 here. Whenever you attempt to reach a goal in which the body's betterment is cast as major beneficiary, you try to bring about your own death. For you believe that you can suffer lack, and lack is death. So do you see how the consciousness is in a state of death? So that's why when we die before we die, it's also that Christian idea of the death of death. We're living death when we're seeking outside of ourselves. Gurdjieff said this in Ouspensky's book, In Search of the Miraculous. He says, it'll be chilling when your inner eye starts to wake up and you realize how many people are really dead even though they're still walking around. It's because we're totally asleep in this dream of death, thinking we can find something that's not out there. He says, "For you believe that you can suffer lack, and lack is death. To sacrifice is to give up, and thus to be without, and to have suffered loss. And by this giving up is life renounced." And now finally, seek not outside yourself. The search implies you are not whole within, and fear to look upon your devastation and prefer to seek outside yourself for what you are. This is exactly what we said about the narcissist. We're driven to seek outside of ourselves because we're not worthy, we're not good, we're not lovable within. People don't love us, so something's wrong with me. Mommy didn't love me. Something's wrong with me, right? Oftentimes, this is where we can't be alone with ourselves. We can't stay quiet long enough to enter the state of the heart and feel love unconditionally within our own being. Have you noticed this? All idols of this world were made to keep the truth within from being known to you, and to maintain allegiance to the dream that you must find what is outside of you to be complete and happy. Now finally, paragraph 8. The fear of love, or the fear of God, is but the fear of loss of idols. So remember when I had mentioned, like, when this message is landing and it makes you jumpy or distracted and resistant and you don't want to hear it, it doesn't resonate, it doesn't feel right. That is a cue or a marker of how we have misplaced and invested in these idols, misplaced love and loyalty in idols. And that's what's being threatened by this message. Your idols. Right? So the fear of love is but the fear of loss of idols. It's not the fear of loss of your reality, but you have made of your reality an idol which you must protect against the light of truth. And all the world becomes the means by which this idol can be saved. Salvation thus appears to threaten life and offer death. It is not so. Salvation seeks to prove there is no death and only life exists. The sacrifice of death is nothing lost. An idol cannot take the place of God. Let him remind you of his love for you. And do not seek to drown his voice in chants of deep despair to idols of yourself. So I will wait here a little longer. Can you finish that for me once again? Learning to be loved by you. Right? Don't drown out his voice in chants of deep despair to idols of yourself. Because that's what's going on. We're refusing love and we're protecting our idols. And they're making us feel despair. So wait here a little longer, learning to be loved by the Spirit. Seek not outside your Father for your hope, for hope of happiness is not despair. All right? Blue bag's going to go around. blessing the offering, and may it be changed into whatever form can point us back to true wisdom and true happiness. And so it is. Amen. All right, let's seal the deal, my friends. Rise up. And maybe take on the practice today of feeling this fullness within the heart, this indwelling presence of God or the Holy Spirit. And so wherever you go, you're not a victim of circumstances. You're not drawn out by excitement, or you're not let down by things that aren't going according to plan. You stay within this sanctuary within the heart, where the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen.